Everyone, always an error when it comes to starting these videos. Hello and welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick on the side of the comms, of course, Justin providing audio commentary and his own brand of madness wherever applicable. So, another day, another story, or another week, I should say. This one, as you can probably guess, is related to Destiny. Its new episode came out, episode Haresy, and there's a lot to talk about. Now, for those, for a bit of context, this video will be both our first impressions, or at least my first impressions. Justin is in a point where he can't exactly play the content of it yet. Oh, and that reminds me, big spoilers throughout this entire video. So if you're at all interested in this content and you haven't played Destiny or you haven't played Heresy yet,
If you haven't keeping up to date with anything Destiny story related,
so
tune
turn
out
off the
now.
video, go do that
Tune
now.
out now and go do that real quick.
You go do that now, okay? Are they
You
gone?
got 5 seconds. 2,
All right, we're good.
1.
So, now that the context has been given and the warnings initiated, back to what I was saying before. So, like I said, this will be a bit of our thoughts going into Heresy, where Destiny's at now, where Bungie's at now, as well as at least my initial impressions of Heresy. I've already played a good decent amount of it. Haven't found everything in the Dreadnought. Apparently, like I said, Bife has already figured out that there's audio from Savathun, Zivu, and Oryx you can find. So that's there. And yeah, so let's get the ball rolling. First off, where we are in terms of Bungie. Bungie is in an interesting spot right now, coming off the back of Revenant. Um, we started off out of the final shape with Echoes being not the greatest. Echoes is interesting because Echoes had to deal with a Vex storyline, and the Vex storyline is interesting because I find Bungie does their best when they can tell stories based around emotions and people. At least that's my personal take on the matter. And there's really nothing that you can get that is farther away from emotions and people than a literal robotic race of hive-minded AI that is stretched across time and space. I think that is as far from human as you can physically get. So it's not surprising that they kind of always seem to not do so hot when they try to tell Vex stories that are revolving around people to a certain extent, which is probably why when they tried to do a Vex-centric story this year, or this episode, they had to bring in the character of Maya Sundaresh, get her in, make her a villain, and kind of make her the backbone of the Vex to kind of give a more human element. And honestly, my thoughts on it is that it's still kind of a whiff. Not the greatest. It wasn't terrible, but definitely not the best. Then we have Revenant, which we just came off the back of. This was a pretty decent season, or a pretty decent episode, and that's a whole other controversy if they're even warranted rebranding them. Mylan actually, in a whole video, actually explained why he himself has actually quit Destiny altogether. I didn't even know that until I was actually compiling different people's kind of initial impressions of Heresy to kind of form my own that I've already made. And yeah, he mentioned that Myland is gone, and in his video he pretty much explained why, and honestly he just said that the story's just not interesting for him anymore. You know, if there is anything interesting that happens in Bungie, it'll take 10 years to do, and yeah, it just feels samey, and him basically being somewhat miffed about the idea of seasons being rebranded into episodes only for a surprise, the same damn thing. Which, again, all fair points, so the best to him in his career. But anyways, enough about Mylan. Back to the point as is. So yeah, Revenant was interesting. I think the story was better. Definitely not the best, but it was definitely solid mid-storytelling. And then we come into Heresy. And here's the problem with all these episodes, right? The big problem with Bungie and Destiny as it stands right now, and Destiny as a franchise, is that Destiny lacks direction. And I was actually telling this to Justin before the stream. Destiny seems to be in the exact same place, and I've heard some people make this comparison as well, that Destiny's in the same place that Avengers is right now. The big bad is dead. Thanos is gone, or the Witness in this case. The big thing that's been built up for years and years, or if you want to be really technical, built up since at least Shadowkeep.
Yes.
Because we haven't really got the Witness until just Shadowkeep. I guess at some point they're like, oh yeah, we kind of need a villain. So, that happened, and now that the big bad that has been kind of made the big center of everything is gone, what comes next, right? Coming out of Lightfall, people were burned already, and so a lot of people have left, and those that stuck around were like, you know what, I'm going to see till the end, we're going to close out the story, and then we're done. And those few who remained even after that were like, okay, let's see what's next. And we have yet to see what's next. All we've been told is that we are going to be getting Frontiers and then something called Apollo after that, which are going to replace full-on expansions, and that's going to be interesting to see how they'll do that, kind of taking a single big expansion and chopping it up into like 2 parts they release over the course of a single year. How the hell they'll do that, we'll see. But the point of episodes is what I'm trying to get at here, is that they were designed to kind of close out story threads. You know, what are we? Let's finish things up. The big bad witness is dead. Let's close up some storylines and kind of move forward with a clean slate. Now, if I may be petty for a second, this would be the perfect time to do D3, but that's a whole video in and of itself. So, we're just not going to go there. So, yeah, the point is we're getting a lot of closed story threads, but at the moment we currently stand, that is the last thing Destiny needs. We need to know what's coming next before we start closing up the story threads. It's good to close up the story threads, because that lets us move on with a clean slate, especially if we follow the whole plan of we're going to leave the system. But even so, you know, if we don't have a knowledge of where we're going, what does it matter? Like I said, people are hemorrhaging from Destiny day by day, and the player numbers seem to show that. Now that Heresy's come out, we've seen something.
I played for a good while.
Yeah, exactly, and I can't blame anyone for having that mentality, whether it's Mylan, whether it's Justin, whether it's anyone who either says, I'm going to take a break, or in the case of Mylan, just I'm done. Both are completely understandable if you ask me, because again, we've been miffed by Bungie more times than I can honestly count, or at the very least, more than I can remember. So, I can't blame anyone for sitting there, taking it all in, saying, I'm done, or I'm going to take a break until something gets better. And so far, nothing's gotten better. Heresy seems to be the biggest improvement we've seen since the entire episode shtick happened, which was almost, what, on a year ago at this point now? Or almost thereabouts? When did Lightfall come out? It was like, I think, early last year.
Lightfall came out...
Or not Lightfall, Final Shade.
Final Shade came out, like, exactly
around this time last year, right?
Yeah, around-ish.
Yeah, so let's say we got a few weeks in between, and then we got Echoes, and that kind of got us into the episodes. So we're pretty much officially an entire year since Final Shade came out, and we're only just starting to see improvements now, which is not good. Again, the concept of closing out story threads isn't bad, and again, the storytelling is mid, but whatever. I mean, Echoes, let's be honest, every season or episode or whatever always is not that great coming out of a big expansion, as always kind of has been. The resources are just thin, timelines, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people got burned by Echoes because they still didn't see what was going next. Even if the story was mid, you could have at least given us an impression of what's coming next. And beyond Bungie's promises of, don't worry, trust us, bro, which, yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
That, yeah, it doesn't work forever.
Yeah, it's like, we haven't heard anything. I mean, Apollo is technically, or Frontiers, excuse me, is supposed to come out supposedly at the end of this episode. Like, we're supposed to lead in from this episode into Apollo. So, that's wonderful and all, but beyond the whole it's coming, we haven't seen or heard bloody ling diddly. Like, it's good to make promises, but it would be nice to see results every now and then. So yeah, that's kind of where we are coming into Heresy. And yeah, things just are not good at Bungie over right now. And honestly, I think when I think about Bungie, right? Who's ever seen that we probably all have, you watch memes, but who's seen the dog in the burning room, right? The whole, this is fine. Yeah, this is pretty much Bungie right now. And again, the whole downward spiral that has been Destiny to some degree is a whole topic in and of itself. You know, the whole fact that it's somewhat been cannibalized as far as PvP is concerned to make Marathon, which is just why. You know, it feels like Bungie themselves almost do not care. You know, they want to move on. They're kind of trying to... It almost feels like, if you really want to be really cynical, that they're doing the same thing with Destiny that they did with Halo once they were done Reach and stuff like that. They're like, we're done, let's wash our hands, move on to the next big project. The problem is, you don't have anything else to pay the bills with. Like, I hate to use DE and Warframe as a good comparison here, because they constantly get compared to each other, especially in the early days of Destiny, but when you really look at the big picture, they are pretty good analogies for each other, or kind of good comparisons, right? in that they're both multiplayer games, massive multiplayer games. They're both fighting over similar-ish types of people. And they've both been around for a decade, which that's not a very big list, frankly. Like, name one big game in the MMO space that's been around and you still talk about it a decade later. Not many, I'm imagining. And so, when you look at something like Warframe, and especially where they are now in terms of, or just DE in general, where they are right now, right? DE is currently in the middle of making Soulframe alongside Warframe, which is a sister project. Now, how they went about doing this is very different than how Destiny and Bungie went about when developing Marathon. Bungie, or Warframe I should say, DE, when they were making Soulframe, or when they went on to make Soulframe, they took the old guys who wanted to do something new, wanted to do the project, and they said, okay, here, go do Soulframe, go and do it on the side, that's cool, whatever. And then they replaced the people working on Warframe so there wasn't less people overall. This is already a big difference because if you don't remember, when Marathon was first in the earlier stages, I believe they took off a section of the PvP team from Destiny to just work on Warframe. They never bothered replacing them. So people are saying, well, the reason PvP hasn't gotten anything for God knows how long is because the team that literally did stuff has been moved over to Marathon, so they cannibalize Destiny to make Marathon, which is already a terrible idea. Because there's nothing that says Marathon will succeed. And the more time goes on, frankly, if I'm being honest, the less I feel like it will. Second off, it comes into how the games are, or how the companies approach the game, right? When DE came up to a big release last year, or in December of this last year with 1999, massive update, they couldn't, by their own admission, get to what they were hoping to do in the timeline they had, if that makes sense. So basically what they had to do is they had to pull some of the guys off of Soulframe, slow down Soulframe's development, to make Warframe again. Because they just needed extra manpower. And that's completely fine. But when it comes to Bungie, have we seen the other way around? No, if anything, we've seen Bungie move more resources to Marathon as time goes on, and less to Destiny. So at least that's how I seem to be perceiving it. Again, you can have your own different opinion, leave it down in the comments. I'd like to get a different consensus on this, but it feels like Bungie, comparative to DE, doesn't care that they're kind of sacrificing the only thing paying their bills right now on the altar of the unproven thing that doesn't feel like it'll work. Like, again, the biggest difference between these two games isn't just how they're also managed, it's how the fan base of the games themselves that play their sister game, or the fans of these studios, are reacting to the projects. Soulframe is heralded by the Warframe community as, it looks good, it might succeed, and there are some people saying, yeah, let's hope it'll succeed, yeah, sure. You don't really see many people beyond the early days when the combat was where they, see many negative sentiment beyond that moment, Most people are either neutral or hoping it succeeds. Now compare that to Marathon. Name me one person who's going, yeah, I really hope Marathon succeeds, and is just rooting for it. Oh, sure, I'm sure there are a few. But from the general consensus I can gather, it looks like most people are like, I hope this crashes and burns to teach them a lesson. The sentiment is night and day. And like I said, that just comes back to how these studios manage things. And so, combine that with all I said before about the episodes, we're not in exactly a great place when it comes to going into things. The whole beware of over-delivery or creating patterns. Yeah, I don't remember how many times people have cited that as another one of the many reasons Bungie's in the state they are now, but I'm getting more sidetracked as time goes on, so I'll just move back to Haresy if you don't mind.
We'll bring it back to the seasonal content.
Yeah, and even there, you called it a season.
Yes.
Nobody can tell the difference anymore, because at this point, is there a difference? I mean, hell, even in their dev streams, we're still calling it
it's still like seasonal format. It's still following the seasonal format. Let's be honest here.
And see, that exactly is the problem, right? When it comes to, and I don't want to sound like an apologist, and I don't want to sound like a Destiny apologist or Bungie apologist for what I'm about to say, especially after the whole rant I just did somewhat about Bungie and their kind of bad mentality that got them here. But I think the reason why episodes up until this point felt so similar to seasons, and this is something I think both Mylan and Bife said back when Mylan was still doing Destiny, way back in Echoes, and Bife said back in Echoes, which basically is, the reason they feel so similar is because the concept of episodes didn't come around until late into development of Final Shape. Going back to the CDC presentation I mentioned before, the whole one that came from the over-delivery, you're making trends, the infamous CDC presentation that went down in history as kind of a thing people like to prop up against Bungie as, see, this is the problem. This is right here. Again, link down in the description of someone who goes over that presentation in far more detail than I, whose name is, I cannot remember, because I'm doing all of this ad-lib, as we usually do on the show, is It's Tizzle. His video will be down in the description. He goes over the mindset of, you know, how Bungie got here way better than I do in far more depth. So if you're more interested in this topic, especially around, like I said, the CDC presentation, look down there. Anyways, where is it? CDC. I don't remember what the bloody convention's called, but anyways. The point is that going back into seasons, you know, not good. Oh my god, my brain just had another one of those moments where it just blanked. Remind me again, Justin, what was I leading into with this?
We were going to go back into seasons and talk about seasons specifically, like the Haresy specifically.
Yeah. And after that, I was leading into something here. I gotta watch I gotta have like a rerun where sometimes this happens, or I gotta like watch where I was going with this. Sometimes I'll make a point, my mind will blank for a brief second. Ugh. Hope that doesn't allude to anything problematic in my later future. But anyways, like I said, look at It's Tizzles if you're more interested in the presentation. But anyways, so, Haresy. Ah, yes, right, the Destiny Apologist. Right. Now I remember. I hate to sound like I said, a Destiny Apologist, but the reason why seasons felt so close to episodes and vice versa is because the concept of episodes didn't come until much later into the concept of development. If you ever looked at the CDC presentation, what I was leading into is that they admit that they basically develop everything in tandem with each other. So there's like 2 seasons being made alongside the episode, or the expansion, they release them together, So the concept is, given this kind of close, compact roadmap, but the concept of episodes didn't come around until after the first 2 seasons were pretty much penned in, which would have been Echoes and presumably Revenant, or at least half-done Revenant. And so, to change up the format, they go, okay, Echoes is still very much up in the air. Or, not Echoes, Haresy is still very much up in the air. So let's make Echoes just the season, call it an episode, whatever. That'll be very close because it was developed to be a season originally. Revenant has been kind of retooled, but again, you've built to see that seasonal DNA. My guess, and a lot of people's guesses at the time, is that we'll see more of that episode concept coming in with Haresy. So, who knows, maybe this will feel much better. Which finally, after all that 17-ish minutes of ramble, 18 probably, we finally get into Haresy first impressions. Told you we'll get there eventually. So, Haresy as it currently stands is good. My initial impressions are that it is really good, and again, spoilers throughout. Eris gets killed.
Kind of.
Kind of. We literally...
as most things work in Destiny, it's a...
kind of. In fairness, in her case, it kind of makes sense. Because here's the thing, right? And to go into the full thing, the opening is literally, you go to the Dreadnought, there's weird inversion anchors everywhere, backer inversion anchors, deep lore stuff. And eventually you come onto the Dreadnought, where Eris and Drifter are already there, kind of looking over things. They get caught in a gunfight, and they get ambushed by a subjugator who is after the new Echo, which somehow wound up on the Dreadnought, but we haven't figured that out in story yet. That's just what Bunch just told us. And they get ambushed by this new subjugator. The subjugator overpowers Eris quite easily and impales her just on the end of his stick. That's it. And he drags her body off the side of a cliff while she's pretty much already presumably dead, or at least unconscious blood loss at this point. And Drifter, obviously, if you know the kind of Drifter Eris shipping dick, loses his mind and goes after Eris quite wholeheartedly.
And
we eventually come in
shows the dynamic that has developed between the two.
Exactly, and honestly, this is probably one of the best parts of the story we've seen in the beginning. That kind of that relationship they developed when they first met back in Season of Rivals. There was a very antagonistic relationship. Now we see that kind of friendship, maybe something more that's going on, to the point where when Eris gets impaled, he loses his mind and runs after her, which, if you know the Drifter, that is basically the antithesis of his character. Usually it's cut and run when possible. So, good to see that, both in character development and to finally see that. So anyways, he goes after the subjugator. We finally show up after the fight is ended, and we find a tablet of ruin just sitting in the middle of Oryx's shrine. we find that that is the same Tablet of Ruin that we discovered way back at Savathun's Throne World, that we also took. How it went from point A to point C, I have no idea, because we have no idea where it was from point B between then and now, but... So yeah, we take the tablet and eventually catch up with the Subjugator, only to find that he is also now killed Drifter. Don't worry, he's got a ghost, he's fine. Well, kind of. Like Justin said,
fine.
Kind of.
Mentally, no.
Not fine.
Mentally?
So anyways, we chase... No. We chase off the Subjugator. The Subjugator makes a break for it, and he gets revived by his ghost, only to find Eris. And this is the second part we see, great emotional scene where, you know, he calls her moon dust, and, you know, this beautiful, beautiful, well, tragic scene. Beautiful in the narrative sense. And so, yeah, that happens. And everyone's kind of mourning the death of Eris, but... Jump cut, we find out after that scene ends that Eris wakes up somewhere with a bunch of hive architecture. She takes off her mask, so we finally get to see what she looks like without the shroud face cover thingy. Honestly, not that bad. It's fine. You know, I've seen worse. But, hey man, we've both played Halo. We have seen worse.
Perhaps.
But, anyways. So, yeah, then she starts laughing and cut the black. So, Eris is not dead, kind of. Dead over there, not dead wherever the hell the other place is. The running theory right now is that it is possibly her throne world, but I actually was listening to a Byte video before this where he gives a counterpoint saying that, technically, she would have possibly had a throne world back in Witch when she had all that Hyvey power, but she gave all that up to sever Xivu from her throne world. So, he proposes possibly an alternative theory where maybe it's Xivu's throne world she's in. So maybe by severing Xivu from her throne world, she inadvertently took the throne world for herself. Which is interesting. I just like to subscribe to the first theory rather than the second proposed by Byte, purely because if there's hope for her getting one, there's hope for us getting one. Player housing, anybody?
Open sesame.
Come on, let me mount Atheon on the wall.
He talked a fair amount about the fact that
Mind your steps.
Eris's throne world would have been basically built off of us during one season, so how much of a throne world would we have, and is it more of like a solar system or something at this point instead of a world?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Between our power that we tithed and the power from Savathun, she was able to exile Xivu from her throne world, and that's just the equivalent of one season. And we weren't even killing all that stronger stuff back then. Imagine all the stuff we could do now. Imagine the tithe we got out of killing the Witness. Like I'm saying, solar system, just... I'll take it, Punchy. It's a good way to get player house again. Anyways. So, that happened. But also, on another interesting note, what will happen and has happened is that we finally not only have a Tablet of Ruin as a seasonal artifact, we're learning how to do Taken thingies, and we're messing around with the Taken. So, congratulations everybody who wanted a Taken subclass. It took us 11 years, but we kind of got it.
Eventually.
Maybe. Well, it's Bungie, so they might not, for the sake of keeping things shocking. Which, I mean, come on, just give us the Taken subclass. Just give us the Taken subclass. Even if you don't ever give us player housing. If you said in the next big expansion, because, for those who don't know, Bungie seems to have developed this formula where they're like, new Taken new light subclass, revamp to existing subclasses, generally light-based, and then darkness subclass. That's kind of the mantra they've fallen into. And they've been doing it since Destiny 1. Destiny 1 was new subclass, and access to all subclasses for everyone, because fun fact, if you haven't been around since the ye old days like me, there used to be that not every class could use every element. There were 3 classes, and every class had only access to 2 elements, despite the fact canonically it didn't make sense, and they would eventually change that. But anyways. So, light subclass was given in Taken King. New light subclass, the access to everything.
Good luck.
Which gave everyone the access to all across the spectrum. And then in Iron Banner, or Rise of Iron? Yeah, Rise of Iron, we kind of got a revamp to some things, I think. and that was where Destiny 1
Hive
ended.
aren't
Then they
switching
kind
up
of
their
started back up
strategy.
that system.
Is
Light,
that saying you used to
and
like,
then
Elsie?
revamp,
At first you
and
both
then
succeed.
by that
Try,
point we
try
got beyond
again.
light, so that gave us the
Spot
first
on.
darkness subclass.
Well, I
And
might have
then
taken a
scrolling
two-hit
back
approach.
on, we have light in the form of the 3.0 subclasses, you could say. The revamp, or no, we got darkness, which was a strand. Then we went back to the light, so we kind of had that whole system of 3.0, you could say. And then we got middle ground, which was the transcendent thingy, so kind of a revamp. And then, if we follow this chain of logic, what I'm trying to get at here, after taking way too long to explain this, and probably not doing as well as I did when I first rehearsed this, I definitely didn't do it as well as I rehearsed this, we should be en route for Darkness subclass come Apollo Frontiers, somewhere in that category. Technically, like I said, it's two expansions that are basically one that's been broken up, so somewhere between those we might get into Darkness subclass. So, taking power, please. I mean, like I said, we're messing around with the Tablet of Ruin. We're learning the way of resolve, which is basically just Sloan telling us how to use Taken without being, taken. And yeah, so that's kind of opening the door to us messing around with things. And oh yeah, the Winnower contacts us on the tablet, so yay, first in-game reference to the Winnower directly, and actually name-dropping who it is, being the Winnower, so that's kind of fun. So yeah, this kind of opens up the door to a lot of plot threads. So, overall impressions. Not bad narratively. In terms of overall gameplay, the Dreadnought's fine. The Dreadnought's fine. I've actually didn't have too much trouble logging in day one. I got into the queue, but after that I pretty much got in straight away, or soon thereafter. Got booted when the systems went down for maintenance, and everything is of course borched, which just happens every single time they do a massive update like this. We were talking before the stream, the amount of tech rot, if you'll pardon me borrowing another Destiny or Warframe term, is probably immense at this point when it comes to Destiny's netcode. So I can't blame them for honestly having shit constantly break every time something big happens. First time I've ever seen BattleEye errors though, but that's new. But anyways, I got in, did the solo version of the Dreadnought. Not bad, not bad. Is it the patrol space kind of thing? Guided patrol space, you could say, and even then, you're constantly getting shot at, so... You had more to do on the Leviathan when they made it a patrol space, like you could kind of do side objectives and stuff like that. Here it just feels too structured to call it a patrol space. I still would have preferred a Dreadnought patrol. But whatever. In terms of the overall difficulty of the gameplay, I mean, it's definitely better to go in with a team. Either that or constantly do healing stuff. Like, they're definitely going to possibly have to look into the healing things. Because, I don't know. It just feels like you get way too little health. Like, it definitely feels like they're trying to go for a roguelike experience, which is definitely novel, don't get me wrong. I'll kind of keep Paul's opinion, Paul Cassie, when he says I would much prefer something new and novel that doesn't really work well than something that is proven to work well, but that we've seen a dozen and a half times already, so I'll give them credit for that, credit where it's due. But I would definitely say kind of look into it, maybe change the numbers around when it comes to the healing, but other than that, it's pretty decent, not gonna lie. One thing I haven't talked about in terms of the whole story, and I'm shocked that it's taken us, as of right now, 29 minutes to get to, is the fact that the voice acting, if you're not aware, for Haresy has been less than it should be, let's say. For those who don't know, the voice lines for both Zivu Arath and Sloan are cut from the game as of right now. And Bungie has been open about this. They said they cut that. There's been issues involving the strike, the voice actor strike. They haven't mentioned what issues they are, but it might have to do with the fact that they're recording issues. Again, we've talked about the whole recording issue in the past, so go back and look at some of the other videos. In fact, I think we did a whole video expose on the whole thing. I think. But yeah. But other than that, everyone else's voices are fine. My opinion on it is... I don't... Here's the thing. Sloan, who comes back in this season, is one of the main voices, at least for Act 1. She does most of the post-mission, current mission, end mission dialogue. So for her to be missing just makes
Pretty
it
big
sound...
deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like, don't get me wrong, Drifter, Eris, Savathun, I'm told, because apparently Savathun's voice lines are in there, and Oryx all seem fine, but, you know, Savathun and Oryx seem to be background characters, at least for this act, as of so far. And when it comes to Sloane, she's doing most of the, you know, in-mission dialogue, so having that one key voice missing just makes it feel much more empty than it is. So, I don't know, like I said. As for, again, why they're doing this, Bungie won't say, and as far as I've heard, we haven't heard anything from the actresses themselves. There's an article linked down below, also fun fact, if you want to read more into the main article itself that talks about all this. That is from IGN, and even they say that the reasoning is unclear at the moment. It could be that the voice actresses are striking in solidarity with the actors of the union, or it could be that there's genuinely issues revolving around the contracts. I'll give my opinion either way. If it is in solidarity, I mean, to each their own. I mean, it's not my place to judge. But if it's, you know, having to do with Bungie and who they're dealing with, I mean, come on, not Bungie. Put pressure on them. Or something, please. I had this whole tyrant prepared, actually, about Bungie and possible dealings with the voice actor strike with AI. But like I said, when I looked into it just before the show, just to make sure I was on the right beat, after I heard Bife cut it from his piece, it was unclear, so it could go either way. If it were having to do with contract issues from Bungie, then all the voice actors would be gone, and at that point, I'm not sure what to say at that point. The game is very narrative-driven, and I don't think an entirely silent Destiny is what you want. I've had to endure for the last few months-ish for a silent Genshin and a semi-silent Star Rail, and trust me, it is not fun. There is nothing like having a great event spoiled by having all characters be on mute and start taking up classes in miming.
Yes. It's not a fun experience for anyone when all you get is just text at the bottom of the screen, and when you're in the middle of combat or there's stuff like that. In a game like Destiny, there's a lot of flashing stuff going on. You're
Yes.
going to very quickly lose a lot of information. Therefore, people this point in time in Destiny's life is 100% going to have to go to lore videos and stuff in order to keep track of what's going on.
Yes, and that is the thing, right? And you even said it while we were messing around in Destiny today, right? That, you know, because it's silent, right? The text is silent. If, you know, Sloan says something to you in orbit because they're experimenting with a new method of doing voice work, instead of having you constantly go to the terminal, they'll just have that play while you're in orbit or something, which is, it's fine. It's not exactly new if you ask me. They technically did that way back in Destiny 1 with some strikes, because you'd have dialogue play from characters in between your loading from the mission into the actual destination or mission itself, like the kind of in between orbital phase. So it's not exactly a new concept. They're just putting it on the main screen instead of like in between missions. So, I don't know. Maybe it's completely new in terms of coding, but in terms of concept, it's not necessarily new. But anyways, back to the point at hand. You yourself said that, you know, if Sloan says something in orbit and you're messing around in the menus, you might not see it, or you might not notice it. And so you might completely miss that dialogue, which, you know, is a big deal. She's one of the big characters for this season. And like I said, I'm kind of upset with Zivu, because of all the characters I was hoping to get the reaction out of this season was Zivu. We all know she's a fanatic when it comes to her brother. I wonder what she'll say when she sees her brother's ghost. You know, it's gonna be like the ghost of Christmas past for her. But you know, I don't know. Like I said, we will see. Hopefully, unlike things like MiHoYo, where, you know, maybe they'll add it between. Hopefully, they'll be able to get the voice actresses back in between the acts or later on. It wouldn't be unheard of for Bungie to voice things in
See,
midway.
here's the thing. I'll say this coming from this standpoint. Chances are we'd be lucky to get anything from Act 3 in voiced, like fully
You think?
voiced. I have a
You think?
feeling chances are, with how things are, they would have to rush and scramble in order to get Act 2 fully voiced. If anything from if everything from Act 2 and 3 is like Act 1 right now, where there's a lot of missing content that is just empty, empty, and there's no voice acting, then chances are they would, if they suddenly are able to go and get the voice actors, they would have to scramble full force in order to get everything from Act 2 in time, and they would have more time for Act 3, but Act 1, I don't see them feasibly easily going and getting everything like set up if they suddenly go and get the voice actors.
I would disagree, purely because the fact that we know for a fact those scripts exist.
Mm-hmm.
They exist.
Well, no, they exist, but the problem is like it's still gonna take them at least maybe a week to go and make sure they get everything in the way that they want, and go and set everything up to go and line it up with what is already existing. Like, keep in mind, no matter what, everything from Act 1 to Act 3 is technically in the game now and set up and ready to go. So they'd have to go through the files and comb through every little thing and make sure all of the audio files are set up properly.
Not Act 2 and 3. They do those incrementally these days.
No, they do it incrementally, but keep in mind, technically, it's still in the game. It's the files are all.
They're not
there.
in the game. I mean, not Act 2 and 3, as far as I know, because people data mine files and Destiny constantly in the files.
Keep in mind, you're assuming that I'm saying it as in it's live. I'm saying it as in the files
mean like in the dev
are part of the game. The files are there for
you
the
mean like in the dev build?
Yes, the files are all connected there and set up and ready for the devs to launch it.
I mean,
but
that's
no matter
the
what,
thing,
they
right?
still have to comb through all of the files and make sure everything lines up properly.
I mean, I would say that's a large task, but like I said, they've already got the dialogue prompts already in. It's just a matter of adding the audio layer on top. So, I mean, neither of us are audio engineers, so neither of us will assume, but...
that part of it depends on how they have it set up. If they have things triggered set up where text is aligned with audio, then that might be a lot easier for them, but it will still take them at least a few days to do. And
well, that's the thing, right?
That's why, like, I'm full-heartedly believe if the strike ends, 100% they're.
Oh, that won't end. Those fucking strikes are going on and on.
I know.
My thing is if they'll negotiate with the actresses.
Yeah, but like still, like if it does end, Act 3, 100%, I could see them being able to get it voiced, everything set up on that front. Act 2, that's a lot more iffy. Anything in Act 1 right now, I don't see getting any voice done at all.
Would disagree because, like I said, we know the time between the acts because it tells us. So they've got about a month and a half to possibly renegotiate for Act 1, and that's just for Act 1, or going into Act 2, and then we've got 50, I think, some days to go into Act 3. So that's about a month and a half. So they've got a month for this, and a month and a half or something for the other ones, depending on if they scramble or something like that. Yes, they would have to figure out what the problems are, and again, we can't really tell for sure because no one has been forward about what exactly those problems are, unlike in Genshin and whatnot, where we know it was definitely the studio. Yeah, here we don't know what exactly the issue is.
There's a lot more unknowns going on.
Yeah. If it's a solidarity thing, maybe they could get some renegotiations going on. Like I said, I am personally not one to judge, but I personally, it's a lot easier to renegotiate with a solidarity thing rather than, studio being a pain, because that requires paperwork and legal and a bunch of other nonsense. If that were the case, then yes, I would definitely agree with you that it is definitely going to be at least Act 2 and maybe Act 3 that we might see something. Or at least Act 3, maybe Act 2.
No matter what, Act 3 is 54 days. Act 2 is 33. I feasibly see, no matter what, Act 3 potentially getting its fully voiced set up. Act 2, 50-50. It depends on how long the voice actor strike goes.
And again, like I said, that depends on if it has to do, how exactly it's involved.
The circumstances of the strike, yeah.
Yeah. If Bungie wanted to, and if it was related to the studio, That'll depend on the legal and and again and that's if the studios let them leave. We see this with MiHoYo too, where despite MiHoYo breaking contract with one studio to work with a mother that isn't a problem, the other studio is making it a problem to transition. So legal, blah blah blah. But if it's a solidarity thing, then my personal 2 cents on it is that that might be a lot more easier to renegotiate with. But anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But that's our whole 2 cents on the strike and everything. Like, and dear God, we're approaching 40 minutes. So,
Yes.
so anyways, we'll call it there, I guess, because otherwise we'll go to an hour, and God help us if that happens. Well, the viewers are already in the toilet, let's be honest. None of you are probably watching this 40-minute video. We're not big enough for that, but... So anyways, have a good one, have a good night. Let us know in your comments. What do you think about Bungie? What do you think about Heresy and stuff like that? And again, links, comments, and descriptions, the reveal trailer for Heresy, Mylan's goodbye video, Cross's kind of thing on it, where I kind of agree with him, so I just kind of included for solidarity, including Bife's thing. I'll have to include his second video for the sake of proof that, he removed his thing, but that'll be in the comment section. And of course, it's Tizzle's video about the destroying Bungie. I would definitely give that a watch. That is definitely an interesting video. May or may not agree. But
it does go and put into major points that's going on in gaming industry as a whole, like developers and their mentality as a whole.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth a watch just in terms of the gaming industry's problems as it stands right now. And of course, IGN's whole missing voice lines video or article down below. So that's the video. Have a good one. Have a good day. Have a good night, whatever time zone you're in. I'm currently at 1:20 in the morning. So anyways, have a good one, everybody. Later.
Enjoy your morning, night, or evening, everyone. Have a good day.